This episode of the Temporary Uncles podcast contains spoilers for Gemini Man and Joker, after 57.5 minutes in. It also contains talk about a few sensitive topics, just a warning in case you don't like that. Now enjoy these stupid boys talking for an hour.
Do you think it'd be funny if there was a guy called Edward, but you replaced the D with an N? So his name was N-word?
No. If you replace the D with an N?
Yeah, so his name is N-word.
Nen.
Is Edward, but
Yeah.
replace the D with an N. N-word.
For some reason, I had
You thought it
like
was Nedwood?
Nedwood already in my head. Like I'd added the N
Already in your headwood?
So I was then thinking about Nenwood.
You are intelligent.
Yeah.
Contrary to what almost everything we record proves, you are actually a smart person. But
I don't know. I don't know if I believe that anymore.
It's like it just gets turned off when we start recording.
You make me an idiot. I don't know what it is, but whenever I'm around
You
you,
were
I
just
get
laughing at a
significantly...
stupid fucking MS Paint Seinfeld video earlier.
Maybe.
And yet you go to university and study psychology, which is a smart thing.
Yeah. That's almost as bad as when we were at Cinema Nova and I asked Nick to tell me what that Dr. Phil meme was where he says a bunch of terrible shit to someone.
And I'm like, you're ugly, you're disgusting, I'm gonna kill you, give me $200. And then Ben loses it every single time. All I even have to do is just go, you're ugly, into this really close up to his face and just go, you're ugly, or I go up to him and I go give me $200, and then he just loses it. And we're about to watch this emotional film.
Yeah, we're about to watch a film where the premise is someone's grandmother has lung cancer.
Yeah.
And Nick's sitting there going, you're ugly,
You're disgusting,
I'm gonna kill you, give me $200.
Yep. What was that movie, Ben?
The Farewell.
Yeah, and it was a very good movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. What'd you think of it?
I enjoyed it. I thought that it was good.
It was surprisingly funny too for a movie about cancer.
It had good humor because I think that that's kind of what it had to be. Otherwise, it would just be miserable. Then the film would just be, isn't it sad that our grandma has cancer? It has to be, well, isn't it interesting and humorous that the culture that one person is coming from has a completely different view from the culture of the person that's affected? Because you go in and you think, oh, well, it's everyone's right to know who has cancer and who doesn't. And if you don't, you're oppressing them. And that's against the freedom of my country. But then the culture that the grandma's coming from is, well, just keep the peace. If people are happy, then leave it. And that's the difference between an individualistic and a collectivist society, where it's about the freedom of the individual versus harmony in the greater society.
We live in one.
We do. I've been there.
Yeah.
There's people. There's Nando's. You gotta have one of those.
Yeah.
That's what you need. You need a bank. You need a town hall.
And a
You need
Nando's.
a church. You need Nando's, and then you can say you got yourself a town.
And then you can say you live in a society. Hey everybody, welcome to the Temporary Uncles podcast. I'm Nick.
I'm Ben.
And we are your temporary uncles for the next however long this podcast goes for. Could be an hour, could be less or more.
Those are all the options available to us. It
Yeah.
could be one thing. It could be less. It could be more.
Yep. We've had 40-minute episodes and we've had 90-minute episodes, so,
I probably wouldn't want to subject other people to more than that.
Yeah, because we don't want them to be too long. Because an hour and a half, that's movie length, I mean, the movie we just watched.
Yeah.
It was an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah, and there's stuff happening in it. There's people dyeing their hair and punching people and drinking acid and
neon lighting.
And dogs.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to retain people's attention for that long, especially so if you take all those elements away, like the beautiful Robert Pattinson or a drug subplot or
Or the amazing Benny Safdie making people think that he's mentally challenged when he's not.
Or like Monobrows. If you take all that away, you're just left with two boys.
Yeah.
And that's hard to maintain interest for
And
90 minutes.
That's why it's a podcast, because they can listen to it while they're doing something that's more productive.
That's true. And if they don't pay attention, like they think real hard about wiping all the water off the top of the mugs when they're taking them out of the dishwasher, then suddenly insightful commentary about films goes in one ear and out the other. And they come back and we're talking about, your mum gay, and they don't know how we got there.
Well, no, they probably know how they got there. I mean, they know how we got there because of the fact that we're fucking stupid.
Yes.
Yeah. What was the movie we just watched, Ben? Because we didn't even mention it by name.
Good time.
Yes, and it was a good time.
Maybe.
Yeah, as in like... I don't know, I have a good time watching it because it's a really good movie, but also a bad time watching it because it's fucking tense and gives me anxiety.
Yeah.
But it's also a really good movie, 10 out of 10.
I require masseusal treatment in order to get over this fucking softy nonsense.
Yeah.
Oh, my knee.
My knee.
Oh, my below. my underneath.
My unders.
This is a transition because a large useless chunk was cut out.
So what were we talking about before? So we were talking about movies that are eligible for Oscars.
Yeah,
because they were put in
because
yeah.
Adam Sandler said, "I'll only do this. I can't do an Adam Sandler.
But I mean, like,
I'll only do the movie if you write me a compelling part that can win me an award."
Well, no, I think the Thefty Brothers wanted to work with Adam Sandler, not the other way around. I think they specifically were like, he's New York royalty. We want to work with him.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, yeah, he's done a lot of shit movies, but he's also done a lot of good movies. And, like, even a lot of his shit movies are still fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, there are some which are near unwatchable, like Jack and Jill, but...
Oh, yeah. And,
like, I have watched Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2 several times each, and I enjoy it every time.
Because I've only seen Grown Ups once, and I still liked it the first... Although, granted, I was, like... 12 when I watched it.
Like, I don't know if this is a shared experience that other people have had, but like my dad has a handful of mates that he went to school with. Like, one of his mates is a couple of his mates that he still sees are from primary school, and a couple of mates from high school. And we have a Christmas catch up every year, and I've always enjoyed going to that and seeing Dad interact with his mates, because the banter that you develop over like 40 years of friendship, and the mates that he has are quite witty, and I really enjoy just seeing these old fellas dick about and just talk shit. And watching Grown Ups
it's the
same thing. You watch Adam Sandler and Chris Rock and David Spade and Paul Blart.
Yeah, and that kind of humor works in a movie like Grown Ups, because that's what the movie's about. It's about
they write a really loose plot, and then they dick about. And I imagine that not all of it is written. I imagine that there's a lot of riffing, that there's a lot of
improv.
Sort of, and it's just because it would be natural for them. They know each other, and it's fun, and it feels fun.
Yeah, and then when you put that kind of comedy in a movie like Pixels, it stops being fun.
Well, that's because Pixels is arse and doesn't have any of those qualities. It doesn't. It's
the worst thing about Pixels is how interesting the idea is, and how good the special effects were.
Yes,
because like. Before I watched the full trailer, when I'd seen the teaser trailer, I watched it. I'm like, wow, this actually looks like it could be good. They literally got the guy who made the first 2 Home Alone movies and the first 2 Harry Potter movies, and he's like, a good director. Well, he was back then. It's
Chris Columbus.
Chris Columbus, yeah, and like,
I got that one.
And like. It looked like it could be a good movie, and then the second the actual official trailer came out, and it looked like Us, because it was just the same shit that's all their other movies, but with an added sci-fi element to it.
Yeah, well, it's like you have the plot that you see a lot of times where it's like, old town schlub has a secret gift, and then his friend, and they help each other, and there's a girl, and you impress, and then you save the world. You see that plot,
But
you didn't need to put it in pixels. Have you seen the short film?
I
that it
have
was
seen
based
the
on?
short film.
And there's no dialogue in it. It's just visual.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
But you could have still made it.
to insert like this 2.5 Men episode into it.
But no, in fact, you could have made it better. You could have made it like Starship Troopers. You could have made it like a military parody or something like that. And they have, or like war games where the main character is a kid who plays video games and dicks about and almost starts a nuclear war with something that he thinks is a video game. You could have actually gotten like a young kid instead of an old man. You know, young kids trying to deal with these old video game characters kind of might have actually been a little more interesting than an old man dealing with old video game characters. Just saying. But you could have still had that old gamer guy and then had a new generation of gamers and brought them together to fight this alien threat. That would have been cool.
You could have an old gamer guy as like as the in like the hero's tale. You got to have a wise old man. Adam Sandler could be like the Obi-Wan of the story if you wanted to do that.
But they didn't do that. They got like was Josh Gad in that movie? I don't know. I feel like he was.
He's sort of
he's like the nerd they make fun of.
Fat
and
with
then
the
they've got like
and the curly hair.
Then they've got for some reason
Peter Dinklage.
Kevin James is the fucking president of the United States, which in 2015 felt like a far cry. In 2019 doesn't really feel like that far off from reality.
Kevin James would probably be more responsible.
Weirdly, yeah.
Because he seems to care what people think about him.
Yeah.
But basically, it could have been...
And also, he was in Paul Blart Mall Cop, so at least he understands quality cinema.
I mean, yeah, you only give yourself to projects that you feel emotionally touched by.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could have had just like some fun schlock and some really vivid special effects, but instead you just sort of got to watch a really tired, confused, middle-aged man.
I mean, that one picture of Adam Sandler at the premiere doing like the peace signs says it all. Like he just did not give a shit about that movie.
He collected his paycheck and he went home.
Yeah. But this new one, Uncut Gems, looks like he gives a shit, and he looks like he's trying, and he's having fun with it. You know?
Well, yeah, because like his older, the older films, and people always bring up like Billy Madison and Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore, where it seems like there were films that Adam Sandler was interested in. He had a hand in making them.
Yeah. And
he was exuberant, and you can see it.
And they actually got like good writers involved as well. You know, like it's not bloody Doctor Strangelove. It's not like a comedy masterpiece, but it is really good, and it's not really good. It's
silly,
good, and it's fun, and it's
heartwarming.
Yeah.
And then like with Click, when that's more serious, and Adam Sandler gives a really
touching,
heartfelt and genuine performance in it.
And the movie's got a message. Like Click's got a message. Don't waste your life. You know.
But then you get some things that he does where you go like, I can tell that he didn't care.
Yeah, like Jack and Jill.
So when you look at the trailer and you're like, this is a different Sandler. This is a Sandler that is interested in the film.
Yeah, well, Punch Drunk Love even. Like that's probably his best performance, and that was always the prime example that anyone would give for Adam Sandler can act. And I think Uncut Gems might actually give that a run for its money, because Uncut Gems looks like it might be getting more popular than Punch Drunk Love was. But what I love is Punch Drunk Love. Like the director of that, Paul Thomas Anderson, he made a movie called Magnolia, which was this big 3-hour prestige film about like all these different plot lines coming together and stuff. It's biblical but modern day, and it's got like a big ensemble cast. I think Tom Cruise was even nominated for an Oscar for that movie.
Yep.
It might have been nominated for Best Picture. I'm not sure. And then he's coming off of that. He's doing press. He's doing Cannes and all that stuff. He's coming off of that big prestige picture. Everyone's like, "What is your next project going to be?" And he's like, "I'm going to make an Adam Sandler movie," and he did, and it was fucking great. It is genuinely a great movie too.
But they're not laughing now.
Yeah,
they're crying.
Yeah, they're crying. It's an emotional movie.
Yeah. You know, Nick. I had a really powerful observation this morning.
Yeah.
I was in the shower, and that's where I do a lot of deep thinking in there.
Yeah. Everyone does their deep thinking either in the shower or on the can.
Yeah,
and right before they go to bed.
And I thought I'm gonna I'm going to open the podcast with this.
Yeah.
And
then you didn't.
And then I didn't because we were talking about other shit.
Yeah.
And the realization is this. All of the Scottish characters that Mike Myers plays have the same voice.
Well, yeah, that's his Scottish accent.
That
Shrek? He has a Scottish accent and then he sticks to it. That's why Big Fat Bastards and Shrek sound the same.
Fat Bastard, all of the family in my whatever is an axe murderer.
So I Married an Axe Murderer.
That's all the same voice.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's like you can see people that often do foreign accents, but they don't just sort of carry this. It's like, oh yeah, I've seen this American be an Englishman 3 different times, and all of them went hello. It's like, okay, I had one that went hello, yes, and I had one that went yeah, I was here, and I had one that went oh hi, haha.
Yeah.
All of them are hello.
Yeah.
I don't even remember eating corn.
Oh yeah,
all of them are that.
But it's like, I mean, like Fat Bastard is really loud, but at least Shrek has some quiet moments, and it's a bit more of like a actually trying to be a Scottish person rather than with. Whereas with Fat Bastard, he's 100% doing the stereotype. But with Shrek, he's trying to actually sound like a Scottish person.
Shrek the ogre in the swamp is an actual Scottish person.
No,
but
as
Fat
in,
Bastard is
but
not.
You know what I mean, right? Yeah, like he's not trying to sound like the stereotype because Shrek is not presented in a kilt with a big bagpipe and a big ginger beard and everything. He's not presented as a Scottish stereotype. He's just presented as a guy with a Scottish accent, you know?
He's just a curmudgeon.
And I haven't seen So I Married an Axe Murderer, so I don't know. But I think that's earlier in his career, isn't it? So he's probably still perfecting his Scottish accent.
But apparently his family aren't Scottish either.
No, he just likes doing the accent.
Because
I don't blame him. It's a fun accent.
I remember reading an interview.
And he's good at it.
When he was talking about his role as vague record executive in Bohemian Rhapsody. And he was like, oh yeah, the voice that I do, that's just my family. We're from Liverpool. All right.
Yeah.
Then explain Shrek. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
Are you and me? I thought that was going to have a bigger impact.
No.
It's the realization that...
the realization that Mike Myers has a Scottish accent.
No, that they're all the same.
Yeah. That's what I just said. He has a Scottish accent.
Yeah.
Thefty Brothers.
Yeah. Tell me, what is a safety?
A Thefty brother is a New Yorker who makes movies.
That is safety?
And there are 2 of them. One is called Josh and one is called Benny. So there are these 2 independent filmmakers from New York, and they're really good at what they do. And what they do is making really tense, realistic films. Because of the fact that they use a lot of guerrilla filmmaking techniques and a lot of non-actors. So that makes the films feel a lot more real. Than they would if they had every character being played by an actor, and like, you know, every single extra on the street was an extra rather than just a real person on the street. I was reading about the movie and about Good Time, and I saw that apparently, like, they hid most of the production, and if anyone came up to like the cameraman or anything, they would tell them that they were doing like a public service announcement or something, you know. And no one recognized Robert Pattinson on set. A lot of people, he would just like kind of be in character the whole time.
Yeah.
So no one would really approach him. So that's why, you know, you get a lot of shots of him walking through the streets and stuff, and no one goes, "Hey, is that Edward from Twilight or Cedric Diggory?" Because he's, you know, I mean, he's got the beard. He looks really disheveled. And he's, you know, he's got his New York accent too.
The accent would probably throw people off. I would imagine
people,
that you would, because you'd see this tall guy that's got some Pattinson-esque features.
Yeah.
And then you hear like, "Hey!"
Yeah. Hey, fuck you. And Benny Safdie, because like when I first watched the movie, I didn't know Benny Safdie was one of the directors. I didn't really know anything about the Thefty Brothers.
Yeah.
I just knew everyone was saying it's a really good movie and Robert Pattinson's really good in it.
Yeah.
And he is. And the movie is too. And I watch it, I'm like, oh wow, they got a really like good performance out of this mentally handicapped person. Like he did a really good job. And then I find out that the actor's not mentally handicapped.
Yeah.
He's one of the directors of the movie.
Yep.
And his voice is completely different. And so I was really thrown off when I started watching like things with his real voice in it.
I think it's always touchy, like, when you have people who don't have, you know, complex communication needs or any specific learning disability, playing people who have both of those things.
Yeah.
Like one of the better examples is Leonardo DiCaprio in Who's Eating Gilbert Grape.
Yeah, because he was quite unknown at the time.
Yeah, that's a young
everyone
Leo.
thought that was like a genuine mentally handicapped kid. And then
there's
wasn't.
a real fine line between not convincing and exaggerated to the point of offensiveness.
Yeah. There's, you know...
And this is good.
There's the line in Tropic Thunder, never go full retard.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I suppose it depends on how much of the role and the performance is based on the character having things to do and say and also happening to be handicapped, or if it's just about someone being like, all right, the purpose of this character is to be disabled.
Yeah.
Now go and
And
be
I mean,
disabled.
if it's and it would be considerably easier on production and on the director and on everyone on set to get someone to get an actor to be this disabled person. It'd be just considerably easier to handle. Some people would consider it offensive just on face value, having a non-disabled person play a disabled character. But when you think of the logistics of making movies, especially a movie like Good Time, where it's very fast-paced and the production itself was very fast-paced, it would be very detrimental to production to actually get someone who is mentally handicapped to play the role, because you'd have to do countless takes. And I'm not trying to be harsh. This is realistic. You would have to get heaps of takes for them to do it correctly, for them to say the line.
Yeah.
Depending on how severe the mental handicap is as well. But, you know, there are plenty of actors with mental handicaps that do really good jobs. It all depends on the production.
Yeah.
If you can afford to cater to a real disability, go for it. No one's stopping you, and it's really all about if you can.
Yeah, I think, well, a lot of it would be based upon, or at least as far as I can tell, is risk. So if you say to the people that are involved in the production, all right, well, we're going to get someone on who may have some difficulties as far as, say, learning or remembering the lines because they have an intellectual disability, people may be less willing to sign on to that and go, all right, well, we're gonna deal with that.
Exactly.
You can, like, there are definitely people that so with Down syndrome, because
So something like the Peanut Butter Falcon, you know, where one of the lead actors is a man with Down syndrome.
Oh, okay.
So something like that, you have to write it into the plot. You have to make sure that it's justified that you are using this actor, and you make sure you're not using them for disability points. And I think a lot of people are saying that he delivers a really good performance in that movie, because he's not just there to be the guy with Down syndrome. He is playing a character in the movie, and he does a good job, apparently.
Okay.
I haven't seen it because it hasn't come out yet, but I want to. It looks really interesting. And it helps when you surround them with people who make it a good environment to be in as well. So when you get actors who are passionate about it, or when you get directors who are passionate about it, and you get people who are just friendly to be around. I mean, his co-star is Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah.
So... I don't know what to make of that, because sometimes there are so many conflicting stories. I've heard that Shia LaBeouf is almost a Keanu Reeves-esque guy who's down to earth and doesn't give a shit. But then I've also heard that he's quite intense to be around, and he's kind of crazy. So I don't know.
I suppose it would depend. Yeah. It would depend on the situation.
Maybe he just likes to stay in character too. And from what I've seen in the trailer for the Peanut Butter Falcon, he seems to be loving and nurturing to the man with Down syndrome. Yeah. So hopefully he's like that on set.
I'm sure that like on a person-to-person basis, he's fine. But maybe coping with fame, coping with lots of copious attention, coping with some of the messages that he wants to try and get out and represent. Maybe those are some areas that he finds some difficulty in, and I can empathize with that, because being a public figure must be difficult, and speaking to the public about any divisive issue, especially one that you're passionate about and you display a lot of emotion for,
Like
that's probably...
when he did that art installation that was a 24/7 webcam feed of people going and saying "not our president" or something like that.
Yeah, like he will not divide us.
He will not divide us. And then
and people were looking for him. Like because it wasn't just that they had the one camera. Because once they had to move that,
they got that. They had that running for a while though.
Yeah.
It ran for a while before they had to move it. It's still up though.
Yeah.
It's now a webcam feed of just a flag that says "He will not divide us."
Well, yeah. If you've seen the Internet Historian videos, yeah. So it was in New York, and then they shut that down. They moved it to Liverpool, and they shut that down, and then they moved it to just some place in a swamp somewhere, and they shut that down. But the thing is, people were looking for him actively. They didn't just get rid of it once. They went, all right. Well, there's another one. Let's find it and fuck with it. And so eventually they moved it to somewhere where you couldn't get to it. It was impossible to find.
Yeah, because it is literally just a
It's just in a room somewhere looking at a flag.
And I think it's still up. You could probably find it right now.
So aside from breaking and entering into a house, you can't deal with it. And so that's where the game stopped, because when it was out somewhere in public, you could fuck with it.
Yeah.
And they found it eventually in what I think is the present place, and because unless you go into the house, you can't do anything. Yeah. So that's the end. That's the end of the game. So I imagine that's very frustrating to him, that he's trying to make a statement about something that he feels is important. For example, who the president of the country that he lives in is. Yeah. And people are dicking him about.
Because he's a meme. You know?
Because
people consider him
so passionate.
And because he's so passionate, especially with something like this, and with something like the little short that he did, the green screen stuff you know, and because he's such a passionate artist, people make fun of him.
Well, yeah, but like you would be less inclined to clown on like Noam Chomsky, who's got some weird views himself, but would just sort of respond to you like, yeah, well, I disagree. But if you go up to Shia LaBeouf and you say, hey man, you know, Hitler did nothing wrong, he'll scream at you. Yeah. And people think that that's very entertaining.
Well, and like there are people who kind of just embrace their public persona and their eccentricities. People like Hunter S. Thompson, for example, who just kind of played a character constantly, or even John Waters. But someone like Shia LaBeouf, he doesn't really have like an established persona because of the fact that he's an actor and he does so many different characters, and then all his different appearances are different as well. You have one where he's got a paper bag on his head that says "I'm not famous anymore." Yeah. And then you've got him doing green screen shouting, and you've got him yelling at a webcam about the president, but then you've got him in an interview being really nice and calm. Yeah. So it's just really interesting.
But this is all based on...
He's also kind of embraced the weird meme surrounding him. For example, the actual Cannibal Shia LaBeouf song. Yeah. He appeared in the music video about that, you know? And he knows that people think he's weird, which is why he did that weird Sia music video where he acts like a monkey.
Yeah, where he drags a little girl around on the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think that was probably just because it was an artistic thing that he thought was interesting.
That too, but he's basically embraced the weird. He doesn't do movies like Transformers anymore. He does movies like The Peanut Butter Falcon. Yeah.
But like actual Cannibal Shia LaBeouf seems like something that was made in good faith. That this is someone who likes Shia LaBeouf.
The best thing is that Rob Cantor made this song just as a joke one night. He put it on SoundCloud or some website. And then it got viral. He didn't expect it to. Yeah. Kind of like Brody Quest, I guess. But he just made it, put it out, got famous, and then he's like, well, you know, fuck it. This is famous, and it's been famous for like 10 years now. I'll make a music video for it. If I can get Shia LaBeouf, that would be incredible. And he did, and it was.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we've got such a splintered view of Shia LaBeouf because most of the time we're not paying attention to him. Yeah. And the times that we do pay attention to him is when he's screaming, do it, or he will not divide us, or wearing a paper bag on his head.
Exactly.
Or, and we go, who is this man? But I imagine that the people that do follow him probably see all the different shades of him and go, he's just a normal dude, and he occasionally does some sort of left of field artistic stuff.
And is a good actor.
So and there are lots of people like that. Like, for example, like Jordan B. Peterson, who is a really popular intellectual. So I don't know how much you know about the guy.
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay, right. So he's a clinical psychologist and a lecturer at the University of Toronto.
Okay.
And he came to prominence a couple years ago because there was a bill that was going to be passed in Canada called Bill C-16.
Okay.
And what that was is they proposed real legal criminal consequences for people that didn't refer to others by the pronouns that they wanted.
Okay.
And so he posts a lot of lectures from his university teaching online. He does a lot of talks. He's written a lot of books. He's written one called 12 Rules for Life. You usually hear him sort of, there's lots of sound bites of him being like, clean your room, and, unimaginable chaos, and,
Okay.
that's no joke, bucko, and,
Okay.
the light and the dark, and lobsters, and there's people talking all about, he's a really quotable, interesting guy.
Yeah.
And people paint him as this sort of weird right-wing figure that hates trans people. But in actual fact, he's a really reasonable sort of maybe left-centrist. Even just sort of labeling him as probably making too basic of an understanding of boiling down this person, right? And so the only times that a lot of people will hear about him is when they're like, hey, look at this crazy guy from Canada saying that lobsters are the highest form of life. Isn't that fucking weird? But when you actually go and you listen to a whole range of his lectures, which provides context for the things that he's talking about, which are usually abstractions and metaphors and analogies to things that he's talking about, you go, okay, this is actually a really reasonable intellectual person that's got a range of interests, and usually qualifies his statements by saying, oh, well, I'm a clinical psychologist, this is my area of interest, but if I was to speak about some of these other areas that you're wanting me to talk about, this is what I happen to think.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, well, that's fine.
It is always interesting how perceptions are always so different. Like, one person's perception of someone is completely different to someone else's perception, Like, I know one Ben Weinstein. Michael probably knows a similar but different Ben Weinstein,
Exactly.
Everyone knows a different Ben Weinstein. You are really the only person who knows the real Ben Weinstein.
Possibly. That's just based on I see myself in the most situations, but I only perceive myself based on my own beliefs about myself and what other people feed back to me.
Exactly. So yeah, it is interesting how sometimes you are not just defined by what you think of yourself, you're also defined by what other people think of you. But obviously there are people who think the objectively wrong thing. If someone says that Ben Weinstein is a black man,
that would be objectively wrong.
Objectively incorrect. So I guess it's defined by what objectively correct things that people know about you, I guess. But their perception of you too, as in maybe someone thinks you're more neurotic than you actually are, and someone might think that you're more extroverted than you actually are, or something. You have people who think different things, and it's always interesting to just every now and then just think about, I wonder what this person thinks of me, and it could be a person that you've known for 2 hours, and they think of you. They could build up an entire version of you in their head, even though they've only known you for a brief amount of time.
And there's lots of things that sort of go into that, which are kind of interesting. So there is a concept,
and people can make assumptions too.
Of course, there are a couple different things that sort of go into that, and there's one of the things that there's a concept in cognitive psychology called anchoring. Yeah. So anchoring is based upon when you have an initial impression of something, that even if your impression of that thing changes over time, it will be bound by and in comparison to what you first thought of it as being. So you can test that by getting people to make estimates about the size of some things. And if you go, oh well, do you think that this thing is big? Do you think the size of this object over there is larger or smaller than than a kilometer? And you go, oh, okay, I think that it's probably a lot smaller. So let's say it's 600 meters. Yeah. But if you said, oh, do you think it's bigger or smaller than 100 meters? You go, oh, well, it's probably a bit bigger than that. Maybe it's 250 meters. Yeah. And so based on the first number that you give them, people will make different estimates. So if someone sees you and they go, oh, right, and you're having a bad day. Yeah. And then they go, all right, well, he's a bit of a dick. And then the next time that they meet you, you might be a lot nicer. But the way that they conceptualize your relative niceness is based on the first time that they met you.
Yeah.
So, and there's also...
They might be thinking, oh, he's putting it on, or he's not... Or they could be thinking, oh, he's not as much of a dick as I thought he was.
Yeah, and like there's the way that we build things up and build ideas and learn and sort of develop personality is based upon these things called schemas.
Yeah.
So a schema is like a fuzzy category. So it's a concept and it's made up of a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And so as you learn, everything is either an addition to a category that you already have, or it's a whole new category itself. So if someone meets you, then you're going to resemble a bunch of things that they already know and have knowledge of.
Yeah.
So someone else's past experience influences their experience of you.
Yeah.
So either you are similar to some things that they know about, or you're so different that you're an entirely different thing.
I can build on that through past experience. I knew someone... I knew this girl in university called...
Name redacted.
And she knew a lot of dicks. She knew, as in a lot of, like, bad guys. And one specific bad guy who reminded her of our mutual friend.
Name redacted.
And because of her experience with that guy who reminded her of this new guy, she didn't really like this new guy that much. So the nice things he did kind of went unnoticed a little bit. And whenever he did something mean or rude or dickish, that was exemplified. And so she would consider him not that great a guy, even though he was just kind of a little bit of a dick.
Yeah, so
you
like
know?
your experience...
But generally, he was a pretty good dude, you know? And when he did something rude, we would pull him up on it. And we would tell him that, dude, you shouldn't really say stuff like that. And he would actually learn from it. Unlike a lot of people, he would actually be like, okay, yeah, no, I won't say that again, or I won't be like that again, you know?
Yes.
And he did.
This is another transition.
Disney is such a weird corporate entity because there are so many people who grew up on the work of Disney. And then from those people, it's like two groups grow from kids who grew up watching Disney movies and liking Disney movies and almost exclusively Disney movies, or at least knowing that a lot of them were Disney movies. There are the kids who grow up, become a bit more cynical towards Disney. People who are like, well, actually a lot of those movies I watched as a kid weren't really that good. A lot of the stuff that Disney makes now isn't really that good. There's a lot of cash grabbing. Disney is quite a greedy company. I fall under this category.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Disney's ultimately a bad company, but they're not great.
No.
And then there's the other group that grows up watching Disney movies who love Disney as much or more than they did as a kid. And they still love Disney movies. They will still go to see Disney movies when they come out, even if they're not necessarily in the demographic. They've still got Disney stuff. There might be a group in the middle that still really likes Disney, but knows that they're not great for the film industry and knows that they're a bit of a greedy company, but still enjoys the stuff that they make. But yeah, it's such an interesting company because they do make a lot of lowest common denominator content.
Yeah.
They don't make a lot of complex content. A lot of their movies and TV shows is you can take them at face value. I mean, yeah, Pixar has a lot of subtext in their films. You have a lot of more dark stuff, or at least mature stuff like Tron Legacy or Pirates of the Caribbean. You can get a bit of the maturity stuff in some of the Marvel movies and some of the Star Wars movies and stuff, considering they're rated M and they're for a family demographic. But a lot of the stuff they make is for the largest audience possible.
Yeah.
And that limits a lot of the creativity that they allow their creators. Sometimes you can get away with stuff like Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's a bit more adult.
Yeah.
A bit more weird.
It's a bit naughty.
Yeah, exactly. But all in all, a lot of the movies they make tend to be Avengers stuff. Now, you can have great Avengers movies like Infinity War, where it's great character work, really well structured, incredible visuals, and all that stuff. And then you can have stuff like Age of Ultron, where it's very It feels very loose. The
Very,
structure,
we are friend, we fight the
the
bad guy.
structure is just kind of there. It's very paint by numbers.
Yeah.
It's very basic. A lot of the humor is incredibly forced.
There's a lot of and they fight.
Exactly, and I mean, like, and it tries to be mature but never succeeds, and so comes off as forcing itself to be something it's not.
Yeah.
The first Avengers movie is just it's just a fun popcorn action movie.
It's a romp.
It's a romp, and it doesn't try to be anything else.
Yeah.
Avengers: Age of Ultron tried to make a romp, but also take itself seriously, and didn't do very well with it. Infinity War was a romp, but it was a really good, structured, well-acted romp that had genuine conflict and genuine emotional value to it.
Infinity War didn't strike me as a romp.
And real stakes. It was a fun movie, but it was serious, and it knew when to be both. You know?
Yeah, I mean, it still had a level of cheese because
because it's a fun pop action movie.
it's got Iron Man and Spider-Man in it, but
Exactly.
it's also like the consequence was big.
This consequence was big. I would consider it not a romp, but it was fun.
Yeah,
And it was good, and it was well structured, and there was a lot of good, well balanced tone. It was consistent.
There was high spirits, but also there was a guy who's going to wipe out half the Earth's population because
real
he's an
genuine
ideologue.
stakes.
Yeah,
And then Endgame was good, but it wasn't Infinity War.
it was a bit busy. There was a bit.
It was a
Too
bit
many
too
things.
busy, too long as well. It didn't need to be 3 hours. It felt like they tried to make it longer than it really needed to be. There was a lot. I mean, like, for example, like the time travel plot. It felt like it was put there just to make the movie long, you know. And it felt like there was a conscious decision to make it a long movie rather than a good movie.
Well, it's
At
hard
times.
to wrap
And
everything up.
It dragged a bit, which you can't do in a movie like Avengers Endgame. And it was very tonally inconsistent for some bits. Still a good movie, and I'd say definitely better than Age of Ultron. And I'd say maybe better than the first Avengers. But out of the 4 Avengers movies, Infinity War is the best one.
I agree.
That was my take on the Avengers movies in the middle of my Disney rant.
Your take on the entire Disney company?
Yeah, well, yeah. And the weirdest thing about Disney is the fact that they try to push out of the box that they've put themselves in.
Yeah.
And they don't do a good job. So they've put themselves in the box of making family-friendly content.
Yeah.
And they have an image.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing you can do to yourself. Put yourself in a box, give yourself an image, because then when you try to break out of that image, when you try to make movies like Tron Legacy, and you try to make movies like Atlantis, The Lost Empire,
Yeah.
or Hercules, or Treasure Planet,
Yeah.
people don't go see them.
I don't know.
Because they're not Disney movies, quote
Yeah,
unquote.
but
But you can make movies like Pirates of the Caribbean. Granted, they were huge. They were the most expensive movies ever made at the time. They were bigger than Lord of the Rings, budget-wise. And because of the fact that they came out when they did, they did incredible. Unfortunately, the new ones didn't.
Yeah.
Because they tried... Well, one, they didn't have the director of the first 3, but also they were just not made it. They're not the right movies at the right time, and they were just bad. And also, they just weren't good.
Yeah, well, the thing is, this is going to be a lot of conjecture from a man who doesn't know a lot what he's talking about. But with Disney, one of the biggest things about them is their brand, is that they're recognizable, is that you can sort of go, well, what is a Disney movie? And you get a good idea about what that could be. And because they're so big, and because their reach is so big, they kind of need to be identifiable and safe.
Obviously, yes, but it stifles creativity.
It does, but when you're dealing with such large numbers, when you think about like, well, we're going to sink a lot of money into the production, into the advertising, into the distribution of these films, they can't afford to be too wacky. They kind of need to be safe in order to keep the investors happy, in order for people to see their movies. And to be trusting, because if you're a parent and you've got a young child,
Yeah.
and you go, I can't take them to all these weird, I can't take them to some art house fucking nonsense.
Well, no, you
I need
can't take them
a
to some
safe
art
thing
house nonsense.
with the mouse.
But you can make kids' movies and still make them good.
Of course, you can make them good, but I'm just talking about like what the interest
Yeah.
of the Disney company would be.
Well,
but
no,
the
obviously
thing is,
the interest is money. But
when you go and you do things that are left of center and they do well, then you get to be brave.
Yeah.
When you come out with Pirates of the Caribbean, it's got this waddling Keith Richards character. You get to be.
And it's
Disney made such a
spooky,
brave move,
and it's spooky. It is creepy.
You
and
get
it's
to
unsettling.
demonstrate competence in different areas, and people go, "Wow, Disney, good job."
Yeah.
But when you fuck up, when you go and you do something weird and it doesn't do well,
Yeah.
you go and you release, you release.
Tron Legacy.
Did that not do well?
That didn't do incredible.
Then people go, Disney, stick to the fun stuff, Disney.
Yeah.
Then people make fun of you.
Yeah, exactly.
So occasionally you have to have a risk.
I'm really hoping that Kevin Feige sticks to his word when making the new Marvel movies, in that he wants to make them different. So something like, well, obviously, I don't think 2020 is going to be the huge shift in Disney Marvel, right? Eternals will be somewhere between Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers in terms of like maybe style and characters. It's a big ensemble movie set in space.
Yep.
But because of the fact that it's an unknown property to the mainstream audience, they want to try and make it safe. They want to try and make it good. But obviously they don't want to alienate the fan base. They don't want to make it, stupid. And so I'm really intrigued as to what they're going to do with it, with the Eternals movie, as to whether or not it's going to be weird and crazy, or if it's going to be safe and boring. But I don't know. The movies that become more memorable are the ones that aren't safe and boring. That's why Guardians of the Galaxy, both 1 and 2, are two of my favorite Marvel movies.
Things that are pleasantly surprising.
Yeah. Black Widow will probably end up being...
In the bin.
No, it'll probably end up being just a good Marvel movie. It'll probably be something similar to Captain Marvel. Not in size, but in tone. Might end up being darker, just because it is a Black Widow movie.
Yeah.
But I think the two movies they're releasing in 2020, especially considering the big gap between their last one and the next one, I think they'll try to make them not necessarily generic, but safe. Whereas something like what Feige said they want to do with Doctor Strange 2, they want to make it a horror movie. They want to make it creepy. They want to make it weird. And the fucking title is Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness.
Okay.
That's not safe and generic.
No.
So hopefully the movie doesn't end up being safe and generic. And I mean, the first one, even then, was pretty weird for Marvel's standards. It's got a pretty normal plot, but all these crazy visuals and interesting concepts that were brought into it, and a really out there third act too. And I mean, Benedict Cumberbatch did a really good job. I think the main problems with the first Doctor Strange movie aren't anything to do with it being safe, generic, or any that kind of thing. It's more just pacing issues.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of the more modern Disney Marvel movies that you go, oh, that was a bit different. You can look at them and you think about what the really basic boiled down plot is, and most of them are good guy, get the MacGuffin, fight the bad guy.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously there's a lot of that, and Doctor Strange is no exception.
But the presentation is usually where people go, oh, that's different. So like a mind-bending...
And also it's more just like in context to the other Marvel movies. So just as a movie by itself, Doctor Strange could be considered just a fun popcorn action movie. Yeah. But when you compare it to the other Marvel movies, it's pretty out there. Yeah, well,
mostly in the presentation. I think I think because it's Disney, you have to have allowances for them not going way overboard. So what they can do...
So Disney could never get away with making something like Batman v Superman. A movie that is very serious, very long, there's not heaps of action, it's quite character focused. There's a whole lot of different subplots and character motivations going on. It's quite complex, almost too much for its own good at some points. And there's obviously the 3-hour director's cut, and 3 hours is too long for a movie to put in cinemas. Heaven forbid someone sit down for 3 hours, unless we do it with Avengers. Then it's cool now.
I think you're probably right. So yeah, if you have things and you go, right, well, if it's ultimately good guy, get the MacGuffin, fight the bad guy, that's easy enough for most people to understand.
Yeah.
You can put it in front of most people and they won't come out and go, what was that?
Oh, that's what Justice League was supposed to be.
Yeah, but
that's what it became. It was supposed to be a get the MacGuffin, fight the bad guy, but also with genuine character moments and complex lore and all this world building. But then they turned it into Avengers 2.0 and it was crap.
But what you can do is you can make surface level aesthetic changes and have them different enough that people go, oh. So if you watch Guardians and you go, oh, well, these people are kind of irreverent, they're a bit scuzzy, they're a bit rough around the edges, you've got like a badmouth raccoon, but it's ultimately a plot that you can recognize. So it can be fun and different compared to some other ones, but it's also not so different that people are going to go, what the fuck, Disney?
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what the cosmic movies end up being now that the Infinity Stones are out of the picture. Because the first Guardians movie was revolving around the Power Stone.
Yep.
The second one didn't really have much to do with the Power Stone, but it still kind of built off the first movie. It had nothing to do with the Infinity Stones, but it was still kind of a similar plot.
Yeah.
Or it was actually less get the MacGuffin, save the people, and just more defeat the bad guy who happens to be my dad.
Yeah.
So Guardians 2 is actually probably one of the more out there Marvel movies in that it doesn't necessarily follow the generic formula, but it's still an easy to follow plot. Winter Soldier is another really good example of, well, actually all three Captain America movies are really good examples of both external and internal conflict, because they all focus on there's a bad guy and we have to kill him. But they also focus on the character's morals, more so in the second and third movie. The first one is just kind of a superhero origin story. He's a good guy. He'll defeat the bad guy. But the second one kind of is like, oh, well, I'm the good guy. I work for the good guys. Oh, it turns out the guys I work for aren't necessarily the good guys. Am I a good guy?
Ooh.
Should I be defeating these other good guys? Because I work for them and they're my friends. Yeah. But they're also members of this evil organization.
Skull Nazis.
Yeah. And then the third one expands on that even more. These people that are my friends are now going against me. I have to fight my friends. Am I a good guy or am I a bad guy? You know? Or are they the bad guy? You know?
If I fight the people who we thought were the good guys, am I the bad guy?
I think Civil War could have benefited from just kind of showing us both sides a bit more. Yeah. Because they did kind of make it obvious that Captain America's in the good here. Okay. But I think it would have been more interesting if they went like the comic, had it a bit more of the reader kind of has to decide their own thing.
I think it'd be more interesting if his name Jeff.
Yeah. Pee pee poo poo.
Great transition.
We talked about The Farewell earlier.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the only movie we saw that day. We also
The Dead Don't
We also saw Jim Jarmusch's new film, The Dead Don't Die.
Yeah.
What was the movie named after again, Ben?
A song by Sturgill Simpson.
What was it? What was that?
Oh, my favourite album by Sturgill Simpson.
What was it called?
The Dead Don't Die by Sturgill Simpson.
The Dead Don't Die. Okay. Who made it again?
Sturgill Jarmusch Simpson.
Yeah. That's something you can infer was in the movie. There was a lot of references to the fact that the movie had a song that named
Jim Sturgill, The Dead Don't Die Simpson Jarmusch.
Yeah.
That's his nick. Those are all of his nicknames.
What, like Ben? What was it? Fucker, the Jew, the nose, the boy. what was it?
I forgot about the nose, the stink,
the stink. How many? Let's list off all the different nicknames I've used for you. So so your name is just Ben Weinstein. Then there's the
Rock.
Yeah, Ben the Rock Weinstein from that one video we did. The names I've had on you for the phone. You've just been Ben, then you were the Jew, then you were the nose, and now you're Fucko Marks. And there's Big Brain that we got for you last night because you're so clever and smart and funny.
Ben Fucko Big the Jew Brain Marks Weinstein.
Yeah. So anyway, The Dead Don't Die. What'd you think?
It was alright.
It was weird. It seemed to call attention to itself a lot more than I expected it to.
I'd say too much. It's a little bit too, like, looking into the camera and waggling your eyebrows.
Yeah, they're like one step away from just staring right at the camera and winking at the audience.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of references to the fact that, hey, we're a movie, but it felt like just Jim Jarmusch making fun of zombie movies.
Yeah.
Yeah, and making it almost really mundane to the point where it drags on a bit.
Like they got Bill Murray out of bed at 6:30 and filmed him immediately just to be like, look,
But that's him.
don't have your coffee. Don't like.
That's him in like every movie from like the 90s onward. He's just kind of tired and he stares into the distance a lot.
I'm really sorry that you people in the cafe were eating. Oh.
Zombies.
What?
Ghouls. Ghouls.
What was cool
But
about
yeah,
that?
that's the Dead Don't Die, because it was just kind of like leaning on the fourth wall, basically chipping it at bits, but never really breaking it like Deadpool does, you know?
Yeah, like
Or Ferris Bueller.
To be honest, I came out of the film a little bit underwhelmed because I don't know what I specifically expected. Like,
no, neither do I.
Maybe I thought it was going to be wilder or schlockier, or like it was going to be a little bit more on the nose as far as maybe it was going to be more Shaun of the Dead-ish.
From the trailer, I expected it to be a bit more
wacky,
just wacky and fun. And then I remembered it was made by Jim Jarmusch, and the other two movies I've seen by him are just equally as slow paced as this one was. He seems to like to just kind of ease you into the movie.
I feel like if Stephen Wright was a zombie movie,
and then just kept easing you. So instead of just like slowly easing you into the movie and then the movie gets going, he just kind of keeps easing you throughout the movie. And it works in something like Dead Man, starring Johnny Depp, because that movie's really slow, but everything else in the movie's slow as well, and it works because that's like how the world in the movie works. And it's really good. It's really really well done, and it's just meditative in the way that it's presented. And I think the black and white also helps.
Like, I've seen some movies that plod.
Oh, yeah. But there's a difference between being slow-paced and being boring. 2001: A Space Odyssey. That's a slow movie.
Yeah.
But it's never boring. Or at least for me, it's not.
I haven't seen it, so...
But High Life, which came out earlier this year, was really slow.
Was it boring?
And boring.
Oh, okay.
And there were a lot of parts in the movie that I'm like, oh, yeah, this part's cool. I'm interested in this bit. I like this part. And then there were other bits where I'm just like, when's this over? When is this done? Can they finish with this scene now? They've been masturbating for 2 minutes. Can they stop, please?
That's
a scene, yeah. Andre 3000 was really good in it, and Robert Pattinson was really good in it. Everyone else was kind of cheesy and hamming it up a bit.
Oh, okay.
But like in a slow-paced, subtle acting way, they felt like they were hamming it up, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And weirdly, I think I told you about this before, Juliette Binoche just felt really off, which is weird because she's a really good actress. I've seen her in other things. I've seen her in Ghost in the Shell, and she was good in that. Anyway, Dead Don't Die was kind of just... It was good.
Yeah.
It was eh.
There were moments that made me sort of go, ha!
Yeah.
But overall, I didn't come out of the theater going, wow, man.
But I didn't think it was awful.
No.
There's some people who just go like, this movie fucking sucks. It was awful. It's the worst movie I've ever seen.
Competent. It was fun.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the cinematography is good. The effects are good. The acting is on par with the tone of the movie. Everyone knows what kind of movie they're in.
Yeah.
They're in like this weird, stupid movie. And the movie knows that it's this weird, stupid movie and plays on it. And so it doesn't feel like it's wasting our time. You know?
You know what? You know what was surprisingly good? Gemini Man.
Yeah, Gemini Man. We saw Gemini Man.
I thought it was going to be a big, stupid action movie.
Yeah.
But it was actually like a really gorgeous, kind of engaging action movie.
And it had... I don't know if it necessarily was trying to be like super intellectual, but it definitely had its moments. And it did try to combat the feeling of self that some people do have, which... is a theme in a lot of movies about clones, but it's not really explored in action movies about clones like this, you know?
Like, I was worried that it was going to be 90 minutes of Will Smith trying to beat the other Will Smith with his dick, and that was just going to be... And then something was going to explode, and they would slap each other on the shoulder and go, and then get jiggy with it. It was going to play at the end.
That's hot.
But it was not that. I kind of liked the character.
Yeah.
I felt that he wasn't just a cardboard nonsense.
Yeah, same with his clone as well. The villain a little bit. But
Yeah, the
he
villain
still,
was a little bit sort of like, I am the bad guy and I do evil things.
yeah,
But
but he still served a good purpose in getting us to know the plot and the second Will Smith character.
Yeah.
And the special effects were great up until the last scene.
the last scene wasn't terrible, but it was like out of a movie that was largely very good looking and doesn't have any sort of gross.
And the movie uses lighting to its advantage too.
Yeah, there's
a lot of really specific lighting cues so that they know what they can do with his face to make it look more realistic.
Because a lot of the times when both the Will Smiths are in the same frame, they're moving very fast, or they're poorly lit and they're moving very fast.
Well, like, and in most of the daylight scenes with young Will, he's got sunglasses on
and a hat.
so especially because of the fact that it's an action scene with the two Will Smiths. It'll be very complex if you want to try and get it to be Will Smith fighting himself. So obviously they got a young actor and they got Will Smith to fight each other. But in a dialogue scene, it's much easier to get one actor to play two characters, which is why you can get those really good close-ups of young Will, and it looks real because of the fact that most likely real Will is doing the performance.
Yeah.
You know? Whereas in the last scene of the movie, for example, they're almost in the same shot every time. It's daytime, so it's very bright lighting, and it's very obvious that they're putting young Will Smith's face on a different actor, so it looks fake. Even though it's still, it's still competently done, but you can tell it's fake, and so it kind of takes you out of it.
They flew a little too close to the sun just with the last bit, because I know that they probably didn't shoot the film sequentially. It's not like they got to the end and then they went, actually, considering how well the rest of the film has worked out, let's see if we just get a real close-up of our attempt to do a completely CG Will Smith face.
Yeah.
But it feels a little bit like that because most of the film is excellent.
Oh, yeah.
And they take, quote-unquote, modern day Will Smith, and they age him up a little bit. They put a little bit more salt and pepper in his hair. They make him look a little bit more distressed. So that way, when you look at younger Will Smith, and Will Smith looks pretty good for the age that he is, if you then go and put a bit of heavy makeup on him and some CG, then he looks fine. He looks sort of, late 20s, yeah?
Yeah. But,
I might check the door. Just you keep talking.
And I think because of the fact that we watched it in 3D, the special effects looked extra good. So we saw the movie in 3D plus, which was this really interesting experience where we saw the movie in 3D and in 60 frames per second, which is higher than most movies, which are usually shown or at least shot in 24 frames per second to 30 frames per second. Sometimes even 25. But because of a lot of movies, what? Oh, you're just walking into the room weirdly. And so because of the high frame rate, it looked a lot faster than usual, and it took my eyes a little bit to get used to it.
Frame rate?
Honestly, the 3D was easier to get used to than the high frame rate for me, because I'm not trying to say, I could tell the difference between 60 frames per second and 47 frames per second. But, there's obviously a big difference between 24 frames per second and 60 frames per second.
And we were told beforehand.
They just said high frame rate. They never said 60, but I could tell.
Remember when we...
Did he say 60?
Yeah, I think that both... When we walked in and we were getting, the free popcorn and stuff, he was like, wow, yeah, and it's actually in this frame. And I think when they started it, they may have...
They just said high frame rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also, you probably have an idea about what to look for. So had they not told us...
had they not told us...
You may have already suspected, but, if no one told me, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah, I probably would have noticed, but you maybe not.
I would have... I noticed
if
that the film looked very...
If they told me this movie is at 24 frames per second, I would have been like, lies! Deception! But because they said higher frame rate, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is 60.
Yeah, I thought everything looked very slick and very nice, and it wasn't a big theater.
And it was interesting to watch it in a big theater, because I haven't seen a big movie like this done in 60 frames per second. I've only really seen YouTube videos done like that. But yeah, I thought Gemini Man, and so yeah, story-wise, acting-wise, I thought it was also just a competent film too. It wasn't bad. It wasn't a movie taken over by the technology. It was the technology in tandem with the story making a good cinematic experience. Helps that we did see it in that specific circumstance. So it enhanced the experience of the movie.
It didn't change my life, and I don't think that I would have paid to see it. Like,
because we saw it for free.
Yeah.
I got invited to a very special advanced screening of the film before the regular consumer advanced screenings.
Because you're important.
As well. I don't even think... I think it's Thursday. The movie comes out today as we're recording this podcast.
Wow.
We saw it 10 days ago.
Funny.
Yeah. And Joker came out a week ago. We saw that last week too. That was good. Really good.
Saw it in a society.
Joaquin Phoenix will win the Oscar.
You're
I'm calling it now. Joaquin Phoenix will win the Oscar or Robert De Niro. But I haven't seen The Irishman, so I can't say. Because I have seen Joker, I can say I think Joaquin Phoenix will win the Oscar, especially considering he hasn't won one before, whereas Robert De Niro has.
Are they more likely to give it to him out of sympathy that way, to be like, oh, well,
I
he hasn't got one yet?
think because of the fact that he's never won one and Robert De Niro has won one, I think they're just more likely to just say, yeah, we'll give it to you.
He didn't even have to eat a raw fish for it.
Yeah. Well, what did you think about Joker?
I greatly enjoyed it. There was some things that I sort of went, eh. The one thing that stuck out to me that made me sort of go, all right, was the fact that because they're trying to weave Joker into parts of the overall story, because they've got Thomas Wayne in there, they introduce it to Bruce. The fact that they the first time that the Joker appears in a theater at any point, I thought, oh, maybe this is the bit where they go out the back and Bruce is going to be there and he's going to kill Bruce's parents in front of him. Yeah. But then when it actually happens, it's just some dude. It was just a guy.
That's what happens in the
walks
comic.
Off the street.
Joker was never the guy who killed him.
Yeah, well, I felt that I knew that, but the fact that it was just kind of a throwaway scene.
But that just makes it more...
Just bang.
In my opinion, that made it more impactful. I thought it would have felt incredibly forced if they made Joker be the one to kill Bruce Wayne's parents, especially considering he doesn't really know that they're out on doing that thing that day. He doesn't know where they are, so it would have been extremely convenient for Joker to... And spoilers, by the way, for a movie that's only a week old.
You probably need to put in the man.
Yeah.
Put in text-to-speech Bob or whatever his name is.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the fact that they did use Thomas Wayne and Bruce Wayne and a whole bunch of other characters from the comics. I mean, the fact that the guy wearing the mask who kills Bruce Wayne's parents is most likely still Joe Chill, the guy who kills them in the comics.
Joe Chill?
That's his name.
Is that a hip-hop artist?
Man, dude, it's written in the fucking 40s, okay? That's his name, and that's always been his name.
Joe Chill.
Yeah.
No, man, Joe Chill.
And for some reason, they changed it in the Tim Burton movie to make Joker be the one who killed Batman's parents, causing a lot of confusion for people in the late 80s. But that's never happened ever in the comics.
Yeah, but in your comic book stuff, you can have 1,000 different iterations of different things. So.
Yeah, but in pretty much every iteration, Joe Chill is the guy. Some random criminal with no personal motivation is the guy to kill Batman's parents. And that's the whole thing. It's kind of ruined to give the guy who killed Batman's parents a personal motivation, because then Batman just has personal motivation to kill that one dude and then... fuck off. But because it's just this random criminal on a random night, this random circumstance, Batman is the one... He becomes the enemy to all crime rather than just this one specific guy. And he doesn't even know who this guy is until much later in his life anyway.
Yeah.
Because of his amazing detective skills.
Yeah.
But Joker, on the other hand, I really enjoyed the fact that the movie didn't abandon its comic origins. It definitely felt like, your prestige drama, but it didn't feel like it was going, we're higher than all those other comic book movies, and we're a higher art form than the comics we're based on. So we're going to ignore everything except for the name of the character, which is the sole reason this movie's getting made in the first place with such a big budget. The movie would not have been made like it is without the comic books.
No.
You I mean, yeah, you could have had movies like this with a creepy protagonist who goes on a killing spree and becomes a clown, and then people would go like, oh, that's the fucking Joker. You're just ripping off the Joker. There's a lot, this movie wouldn't have existed without the Joker and without Batman, and so I like that it didn't feel the need to feel higher than comic books, because some movies try to do that, and it doesn't work ever. When your movie tries to be better than... I mean, your movie can be better than the source material, but when your movie tries to be higher than your source material, it never works.
Yeah, I can't even comment on that because I don't read the comics, so I wouldn't...
No, exactly. But I like the fact that they... I mean, obviously, they didn't go all out in saying that this is a comic book movie. This is in the same genre as the Avengers. Which, it is... because of the fact that it's based on a comic book. But so is Old Boy, so is Snowpiercer, so is Blue is the Warmest Color. They're all based on comic books.
I mean, that's probably one of the reasons that I actually went to see it, because it looked good and it didn't look like a superhero movie. Because I don't want to watch
it's a comic book movie, but not a superhero movie.
It's a movie that happens to be about a comic book character.
But it doesn't abandon its comic book roots. It has the same real ideology as the character. It feels like the same character from the comics jumped up and they just gave him an origin story.
Yeah, it's connected and it's in there. I think they
I like that.
Maybe they just wanted to tell a tale that sort of fit neatly with the Joker.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they went, all right, it's a Joker
it's
film.
an Elseworld story. It's a story that very well could have been written as a comic book,
Sure.
Yeah, it could have been. There have been plenty of like serious takes on characters from comics in comics.
Yeah.
And it just I like that's kind of what they can do with like their Elseworld, their Black Label is what they're calling it, which is what their movies will be that are not part of a cinematic universe or a franchise. So standalone movies like this, or like Superman Red Sun, which is coming out later this year, an animated movie about Superman if he grew up in Russia. That's based on a comic book, but still, it's an interesting take on the character. And so DC seems to get away with this a lot more than Marvel does. DC tends to write a lot of what if stories. And so that's basically what this new Joker movie is. It's just, what if this Batman villain was down on his luck stand-up comedian? Which is actually his origin in The Killing Joke. He was a stand-up comedian who turned to a life of crime and then fell in a vat of acid and became the Joker.
Okay.
And his origin is almost always involved starting as a member of the Red Hood gang, fighting Batman one-on-one, getting thrown into the vat of acid at Ace Chemicals, and coming out bleached with red lips and green hair,
Yeah.
Sometimes the red lips will be added, and because of this scarring, he's got like a permanent smile and stuff.
Yeah.
It happens in the Jack Nicholson Joker as well.
Yeah.
And but yeah, so what The Killing Joke does is give him a sad origin as a failing stand-up comedian. And you can say there's a lot of influence of The Killing Joke in the movie Joker, because he's a failing stand-up comedian in this one. But a lot worse stuff happens in Joker to him than in Killing Joke. Killing Joke focuses on him having one bad day and that changing his life forever and becoming the Joker. Whereas Joker kind of takes place over like a week, maybe a couple weeks, rather than one day,
Yeah, I mean...
I'd say like a week.
Like, the portrayal of mental illness in the film is reasonable, because it's not just about some guy that's vaguely crazy. It's about a guy that has a history of neurological illness. He's from
his family almost as well.
He's from a low socioeconomic status. There's a potential genetic diathesis because his mother has some form of psychotic illness, and also that he's got reasonably low social support. His social skills aren't great. So it's a really holistic kind of portrayal, and he's receiving some psychosocial therapies in the 70s, which is probably not that great. He's also taking some medications, which was still probably not stellar at the time.
It's supposed to take place in 1981. I think I looked it up, and that's supposed to be when it takes place.
Yes, still anything before sort of the turn of the century, or maybe the mid-90s, I probably wouldn't necessarily want to be a mental patient.
Especially in Gotham City, which is the worst city ever to live in.
Yeah, and he feels like there's people that have great contempt for him, and he feels like he's got reasonably low low sense of control, and he's got, apparently, some sort of mood dysregulation. He's reasonably quite unhappy.
And
so
actually,
there's lots of things to go into that would explain why he acts the way that he does.
And honestly, keeping the movie set in Gotham City keeps it grounded as to why the world is so bad. Because Gotham City in the comics is this hellhole of a shit city, New York times 10 to live in.
Gotham's not a nice place.
So they keep it like that. Instead of trying to make some dingy portrayal of New York City, they keep it set in Gotham so they can get away with making all the characters horrible. You know?
I mean, I kind of forgot that it was set in a fictional city, because when it started, I saw the place and I was like, I wonder if there are places in New York that still look like old New York, like in this movie. And then then there's and Gotham. I'm going, oh, this isn't New York.
And then there's the big and then they change Arkham Asylum to Arkham State Hospital. Which is an interesting change. It's like contextually kind of the same place, but not nearly as sinister, and obviously not housing supervillains.
Well, given the time period, like, asylums were buildings that existed, and they were hospitals, but they weren't just medical hospitals. They were basically people that you put people there that weren't had broad behavioral issues before we could really do a lot for people.
And in
just stick them somewhere.
In the comics, Arkham Asylum started as that, and then went really downhill. And so what they basically, especially when Batman came about, he changed and remodeled Arkham into being basically a house that houses supervillains. Specifically, because there's so many in Gotham.
Specifically, not just a penal hospital, but a hospital for those who are supervillains.
And criminals, I'd say, rather than just supervillains. Criminals.
But they've all got a name and a costume and a power.
Insane criminals. Well, I think henchmen go there too, probably, if they're crazy. But yeah, I just like I think just Joker was just a really good movie. Not a masterpiece, like some people are saying.
Yeah.
I gave it 9 out of 10. I think really good.
Probably, for me, I thought, maybe a 7.5 to an 8.
I was really into it, especially in the last half of it. I was really into it. And I may have just biased because of the fact that I'm a big DC Comics fan.
I know what that is! Sorry. But, like, there are some people out there saying, it's too violent, it's too gory, it's too...
The controversy surrounding this movie is not controversial at all because it's entirely manufactured.
Because, there are about, 7 people that the Joker kills, and there's one that's especially gruesome.
Yeah,
but
there are some movies, like The Clockwork Orange, that had genuine controversy surrounding them, right? Yeah. The Joker didn't. People wanted headlines.
Yeah.
That didn't exist.
Yep.
They tried to make this movie out to be the next Clockwork Orange.
But it's not.
But unlike Clockwork Orange, unlike 1971, people know that violence in movies is fake. I mean, obviously people knew that in 1971 too, but we've had a lot more... We've had movies that are worse.
I thought people would be more concerned about, like, the rape.
Well, yeah, the ultra-violence and the rape.
And the underage sex.
But, like...
the brainwashing.
But, I mean, honestly, most of the controversy surrounding that movie was about the violence.
Really?
Yep, because people were prudes in 1971.
Well, I thought that people, like, especially the Americans, would be more upset about, like, sexual elements, because they don't want anyone to...
I think they were, but
sex.
the ultra-violence was, like, the main reason the movie got banned. For some reason. Remember, this was 1971, so this was really before a lot of gory grindhouse culture. You know, there were movies like, Last House on the Left and I Spit on Your Grave, but those all came out after A Clockwork Orange, I think. And but yeah, unlike Clockwork Orange, we live in 2019.
In a society
where a movie like Joker, especially, I think the main problem was the fact that Joker was a big mainstream movie.
Yeah.
And it had a character who was bad, but the movie tells you that he's bad. The movie doesn't try to justify his actions.
Of course it does quite well.
And all the people complaining about this movie hadn't seen it when they were complaining about it. And now they are finding literally any little tiny thing that is going wrong with the release of this movie and making it a headline that no one cares about.
Well, I mean, it's kind of anti-establishment because it is about how sort of reprehensible the views of some of the higher society people are, and how they view the common people as being junk and being clowns, and people rise up.
Yeah.
And it makes comment about how there are problems that arise when you don't take care of the populace at large, like when you take funding out of Medicare, and when you don't, and when people don't treat their public servants well, like there's the garbage people strike, and so people are probably concerned about that, and also they lampoon the media where they go, oh well, we can't have these awful people on television. We're a clean show, and then immediately after they replay Murray whatever's fucking murder on the television, on all channels.
Exactly. Well, like and all the controversy surrounding this movie, that there've been people trying to basically they're going and saying, this movie's going to cause a shooting. This movie's going to cause someone to do something bad. And then no one does something bad, and they're like, this movie's still going to make someone do something bad.
Well, they make allusions to the.
Please do something bad. We need headlines. We need people to click on our articles. Please, someone cause a mass shooting because of Joker.
Well, they make allusions to the Allura shooter, the guy in the theater that they called the Joker, that supposedly. But the thing is that was
the one who shot up the Dark Knight.
Yeah, that was
an entirely
they made
incidental.
That up. Yeah, he didn't call himself the Joker. He
did shoot up a theater that was playing the Dark Knight.
Yeah, but he wasn't doing it because he thought that he was the Joker.
And it had nothing to do with the fact that it was playing the Dark Knight. That movie could have been playing literally any movie.
Yeah, the media made it up.
Yeah, no, exactly.
He killed people, absolutely, but it wasn't to do with the movie. He didn't call himself the Joker. He had the fact that he had colored hair was incidental.
Yeah, and it's like they try to make it that these things are bad, right? They will obviously say, oh, the Christchurch shooter was an awful person.
Yeah,
here's his manifesto, so everyone can read his views and beliefs. God, the media is fucking stupid. We live in a society